He said, "That's business," until she made it personal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. He did not raise his voice. He did not explain himself. He barely looked up from the glass conference table as he said the words, calm and final. That is business. Those two words landed heavier than a slammed door. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that only exists on the top floor of a corporate tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A skyline stretching for miles. A long table polished so perfectly it reflected every face sitting around it. At the head of the table sat Daniel Wright. At 38 years old, he had built an empire measured in billions of dollars, quarterly reports, and decisions that ruined or rescued entire careers before lunch. To Daniel, this meeting was already over. Across from him stood Emily Carter, a junior operations manager who was not supposed to be speaking at all. Her position was small. Her salary barely covered rent and groceries. Her voice, according to company culture, was meant to stay quiet. But she was standing anyway. The proposal on the screen behind Daniel showed neat charts and clean numbers. A cost-cutting plan that would increase profits by 7%. A plan that also meant shutting down a regional supplier and laying off more than 100 hourly workers. People with names, people with families. Emily had reviewed the numbers twice last night, sitting at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning, measuring rice into a cup because groceries had to last until payday. She knew the plan made financial sense. That was the problem. She had cleared her throat once before speaking, and that alone had drawn surprised glances. No one expected resistance from her. "There is another option," she said carefully. "We could renegotiate logistics instead of terminating the contract. It would cost more in the short term, but it keeps those jobs intact." Daniel finally looked up, not annoyed, not angry, just curious, like a man examining an object that did not belong where it was. "The numbers do not support that," he said. "This company is not a charity." Emily swallowed, her hands tightening at her sides. "They are not just numbers," she replied. "They are people who kept this supply chain running through storms, strikes, and shortages. We would not be here without them." A pause. Daniel leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes calm. "That is business," he repeated. The decision was logged. The meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped softly against the floor as executives stood and filed out, already moving on to their next problem. Emily stayed where she was. She knew what speaking up would cost her. She felt it settling in her chest like a weight. Performance reviews. Contract renewals. Quiet labels like difficult, emotional, not strategic. Daniel gathered his tablet, already done with her. What he did not say, and what no one in that room realized, was that this had never been just another decision to him. This was a test. And Emily Carter had just done something no one else ever had. She made it personal. Emily Carter did not leave the conference room feeling brave. She left feeling exposed. By the time she reached the elevator, her pulse was still racing, her mind replaying every word she had said, every second she had stood there, while people more powerful than her avoided eye contact. The doors slid shut with a soft chime, sealing her alone inside the mirrored box as it descended. Her reflection stared back at her. Neat blazer. Sensible shoes. The look of someone who belonged. She knew better. Emily earned $58,000 a year before taxes. After rent, student loans, health insurance, and groceries, there was not much left. She tracked expenses in a spreadsheet. She bought store brands. She skipped dinners out and told her friends she was busy. This job was not just a stepping stone. It was survival. When the elevator opened onto the operations floor, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations hushed. Screens glowed. Keyboards clicked, but the energy was tight, restrained. News traveled fast in a building like this. She felt it in the way her coworker Mark glanced up and then quickly looked away. in the way her supervisor did not wave her over like usual, in the silence that followed her as she sat down at her desk. At 11:30, her calendar pinged, meeting request, operations review. No explanation, no agenda. Her stomach tightened. Emily spent the next hour pretending to work, answering emails she barely read, her thoughts drifting back to the suppliers in Ohio. She had visited their facility once, months ago. She remembered the line supervisor who had shown her pictures of his kids taped to his locker, the woman in shipping who brought homemade muffins on Fridays. They would never know her name, but she knew theirs. At noon, she walked into a smaller conference room. Glass walls, neutral art, a room designed for quiet decisions. Her supervisor, Linda, sat at the table, lips pressed thin. "Close the door," Linda said. Emily did. "I am going to be direct," Linda continued. "You put yourself on the radar this morning." Emily nodded. "I understand. This company values initiative," Linda said, carefully. "But timing and hierarchy matter. Senior leadership does not appreciate surprises." "I was not trying to challenge anyone," Emily replied. "I was trying to offer an alternative," Linda sighed. "Daniel Wright does not like being challenged." That name again. Spoken softly, like a warning. "The plan is moving forward," Linda added. "And you are being reassigned, effective immediately." Reassigned was a polite word. Emily knew what it meant. Less visibility. Less influence. No seat at important tables. "Is this disciplinary?" Emily asked. Linda hesitated. "No. But it is not a promotion either." Emily felt the weight settle fully then. The quiet punishment that did not show up in writing, the kind that slowly pushed people out. When she returned to her desk, she found an email waiting for her. A new reporting structure. A new set of responsibilities. Routine. Replaceable. She stared at the screen for a long moment before closing her eyes. She could have stayed silent. She could have agreed. She could have kept her head down and her future intact. But as she shut down her computer that evening and stepped into the cooling air outside the building, Emily knew something else too. If she had to lose this job someday, she would not lose herself with it. What she did not know was that from the top floor, Daniel Wright was watching the fallout unfold. And he was paying attention in a way no one had ever noticed before. The reassignment did not come with an announcement. It did not need one. By the end of the week, Emily Carter understood exactly what it meant to fall out of favor without being fired. Her new desk sat farther from the windows, closer to the printer, where conversations were short and carefully neutral. The projects she was given were safe ones. Necessary, but invisible. No one said her name in meetings anymore. On Monday morning, she arrived early, as she always did, coffee in hand, laptop open, head down. She told herself this was temporary, that good work still mattered. By 10 o'clock, an email landed in her inbox. Subject: Vendor Transition Support. It was a request from finance. A routine task. Compile documentation for the supplier shutdown. Timelines, cost savings, risk mitigation. Emily read the message twice. They were asking her to help dismantle the very thing she had spoken up to protect. She sat still, staring at the screen as the office hummed around her. Phones rang, printers whirred. Someone laughed near the break room. Life continued, indifferent. She could complete the task. No one would question it. In fact, refusing would draw attention she could not afford. Emily opened the attached files. Names filled the spreadsheet. Facilities, head counts, contract dates. She recognized some of them. Her chest tightened, but her hands stayed steady. Instead of filling in the requested data, she added a new tab at the end of the document. Just one. She titled it Impact Analysis. In clean, neutral language, she outlined what the shutdown would mean beyond numbers. Delayed deliveries, regional unemployment spikes, increased costs to onboard new vendors. Risks no one wanted to talk about. She did not dramatize. She did not accuse. She did not sign it with emotion. She sent the file back to finance before lunch. Across the building, on the top floor, Daniel Wright reviewed his afternoon briefing. He did not need to read everything. His team distilled information into bullet points, into conclusions. He trusted them. But one line caught his eye. Additional documentation included by operations. He opened the attachment. At first, it was exactly what he expected. Tables, metrics, predictable compliance. Then he reached the final tab. Daniel slowed. He read it once. Then again. No pleas. No moralizing. Just facts arranged in a way that made the decision heavier than before. The kind of weight he usually ignored. He leaned back in his chair, silent. This was not defiance. This was restraint. Emily Carter had done exactly what she was told. And just a little more. By Thursday, the consequences arrived. She was excluded from a planning call she had been scheduled to attend. Her badge access no longer worked on the executive floor. Her supervisor stopped assigning her anything that touched strategy. Emily noticed everything. She also noticed something else. No one asked her to remove the extra analysis. No one told her to stop. On Friday evening, as she packed up to leave, Mark from procurement stopped by her desk. "Hey," he said quietly. "That vendor analysis you sent? It is circulating." Emily looked up. "Circulating how?" He shrugged. "High places." She nodded once, not allowing herself to hope. At home that night, she reheated leftovers and sat at her small kitchen table, the same one where she tracked expenses and ate most of her meals. She thought about her parents, who taught her that work meant doing the right thing even when it cost something. She had not been rewarded. She had not been thanked. But she had not backed down either. What Emily did not know was that Daniel Wright had made a note in the margin of her file. Just one sentence. Watch her. And the test was far from over. The following week settled into a strange rhythm. Emily Carter worked harder than ever, yet felt smaller each day. Her new responsibilities were precise and endless. Audit support, data reconciliation, vendor closeout checklists. Work that had to be done but never earned recognition. The kind of work assigned to someone being quietly tested or quietly erased. She arrived before 8. She left after 6. She stopped checking the time. At lunch, she ate at her desk, scrolling through supplier updates and internal memos, careful not to appear idle. She noticed how conversations paused when she approached the break room, how her name no longer appeared on planning documents. This was how companies enforced obedience without confrontation. On Wednesday afternoon, another email arrived. Subject: Executive briefing, support needed. Her task was simple. Prepare background materials for a board-level discussion on cost optimization. No opinions, no recommendations, just facts. Emily almost smiled. She had learned. She assembled the materials with surgical neutrality. Charts, timelines, industry benchmarks, every number double-checked, every assumption sourced. And then, at the very end, she did something small. She included a one-page appendix. No commentary, no argument. Just a list of long-term risks associated with supplier instability. Industry-wide data. Public reports. Case studies from competitors who had made similar decisions and paid for it years later. She did not send it to anyone directly. She uploaded the file to the shared drive and logged it like any other deliverable. That evening, as she shut down her computer, Linda stopped by her desk. "You are being careful," Linda said, not unkindly. Emily met her gaze. "I am doing my job." Linda hesitated, then nodded. "Just be sure it is worth it." Emily did not answer. On the top floor, Daniel Wright skimmed the executive briefing before dinner. He read fast. He always had. But again, he slowed near the end. The appendix was not highlighted. It was not flagged. It was simply there, waiting for anyone willing to read past the obvious. Daniel leaned back, fingers resting against his chin. Most people fought systems loudly. Others surrendered quietly. Emily Carter was doing something else. She was documenting the truth and letting it speak for itself. By Friday, the tension reached a new level. Emily was called into human resources for what was described as a routine compliance check. Questions about communication protocols, about respecting chain of command, about understanding her role. No accusations, no warnings. Just a reminder of how fragile her position was. When she returned to her desk, her access to certain internal dashboards had been removed. Temporary, they said. Administrative. Emily stared at the locked screens for a long moment before opening a notebook and continuing her work by hand. That night, she took the subway home, standing between strangers, holding onto the pole as the train rattled through the city. She felt tired in a way sleep would not fix. She thought about quitting, about sending out resumes, about choosing peace. But then she thought about the people whose jobs were already being erased by decisions made in rooms like the one she had stood in weeks ago. And she stayed. What Emily did not see was the message Daniel Wright sent late that night to his chief of staff. No subject line, no explanation, just one sentence. Do not interfere, let it play out. Because the pressure was part of the test, and Emily Carter was still standing. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning at 9:12. No subject line, no greeting, just a calendar invite. Attendees: Daniel Wright, Emily Carter. Location: Executive Conference Room B. Duration: 30 minutes. Emily stared at the screen, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. This was not normal. Junior operations managers did not get one-on-one meetings with the chief executive officer. Not without lawyers, not without a reason. Her first instinct was fear. Her second was clarity. She accepted the invite. At 9:30 sharp, Emily stepped onto the executive floor for the first time since her access had been restricted. The hallway was quiet, carpeted thick enough to silence footsteps. Framed magazine covers lined the walls, all featuring the same man, Daniel Wright. Inside Conference Room B, sunlight poured through tall windows, cutting clean lines across the table. Daniel stood near the glass, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He did not turn when she entered. "Sit," he said. Emily did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel turned, not with the sharp authority he used in board meetings, but with something more measured. "I read your appendices," he said. Emily nodded. They were relevant. They were not requested. "No," she agreed, "but they were accurate." Daniel studied her, eyes steady. "Do you know how many people work very hard to tell me exactly what I want to hear?" Emily met his gaze. "I can imagine." End quote. "And yet," he continued, "you keep giving me what I did not ask for." Emily folded her hands in her lap. "You hired me to analyze operations. That is what I am doing. You process relation. You have number two figure." Daniel let out a quiet breath. "Even when it costs you." Yes. The word was simple, unembellished. For the first time, Daniel smiled. Not warmly. Not unkindly, just slightly. "Do you know why I have not stopped you?" he asked. Emily hesitated. "Because stopping me would draw attention." "That is part of it," he said. "But mostly, because I wanted to see how far you would go without being protected." The honesty landed heavier than any reprimand. "You reassigned me," Emily said carefully. "You reduced my access. You let human resources question my judgment." "Yes. And you are telling me this because?" Daniel walked back to the table and sat across from her. "Because I wanted to know if your integrity was situational," he said, "or structural." Emily did not answer immediately. Then she spoke. "If I only do the right thing when it is rewarded, then it is not integrity. It is negotiation." End quote. Daniel watched her closely. "This company is full of people who negotiate their values," he said. "They call it strategy. And some of them are very successful," Emily replied. "They are," Daniel agreed. Silence settled between them again. Different this time. Not tense. Observant. Daniel tapped the table once. "You are not predictable, Emily Carter." "I know." She felt her pulse quicken, but her voice stayed even. "I am not trying to be." "I know," he said. "That is why this meeting exists." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, project outlines, a new internal task force reviewing supplier transitions. Her name was listed, not reassigned, not buried, embedded. "You will report directly to me on this," Daniel said. Unofficially. No announcements. Emily looked up. And when this becomes inconvenient, Daniel held her gaze. That is the test. She closed the folder slowly. Then let us be clear, she said. I will not change how I work. Daniel nodded once. Good. When the meeting ended, Emily left the executive floor with the same posture she had entered. But something had shifted. This was no longer just pressure without a name. This was proximity. And Daniel Wright had stepped closer, not to rescue her, but to see if she would still stand when the stakes were finally personal. Emily Carter did not tell anyone about the folder. She returned to her desk the same way she always did, set down her bag, opened her laptop, and began working through the backlog that never seemed to shrink. To anyone watching, nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, everything had. The task force Daniel Wright mentioned did not exist on paper. There were no meetings on the calendar. No official authority. Just a quiet stream of documents routed to a private folder only the two of them could see. Emily treated it the same way she treated everything else. Carefully, methodically, without expectation. She reviewed supplier transitions line by line, flagging inconsistencies and long-term risks. She suggested alternative timelines, phased reductions, pilot programs. She never used emotional language. She never argued. She let the work speak. Across the building, Daniel watched patterns emerge. Not just in Emily's reports, but in the system around her. Requests she made were delayed without explanation. Approvals stalled. Middle managers questioned scope. Someone removed one of her files from a shared drive, then quietly restored it hours later. Resistance without fingerprints. Daniel did not intervene. Not yet. He wanted to know who pushed back. Who complied. Who ignored facts when they became inconvenient. One afternoon, Emily received a call from procurement. We need you to revise the Ohio timeline, the voice said. Senior leadership wants it accelerated. Emily glanced at her notes. That will increase failure risk. We understand, the voice replied. But that is the direction. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Put the request in writing, she said. With the rationale. There was a pause. I will see what I can do. Very do, to a do. The email never came. Instead, the timeline change appeared in the system, approved by someone 2 levels above her. Emily documented the discrepancy and moved on. She did not complain. She did not escalate. She adjusted projections, attached data, and submitted the update with a neutral note. That night, Daniel reviewed the change. He noticed the absence of justification. The quiet override. He also noticed Emily's response. She had complied without surrendering accuracy. Most people chose one or the other. Daniel sent a message to his chief financial officer, who approved the revised Ohio timeline. The reply came minutes later. I did not. Another message followed. Find out. The next morning, Emily arrived to find a meeting request waiting for her. Subject. Clarification discussion. Human resources again. This time, the questions were sharper. You have raised concerns outside your scope, the representative said. You have documented decisions in ways that could be misinterpreted. You need to be careful about how your actions are perceived. Emily listened. She nodded. She took notes. When they finished, she spoke calmly. I am not challenging authority, she said. I am recording outcomes. The representative frowned. That can still create risk. Yes. Emily agreed. Ignoring risk creates more. 2. She was dismissed without resolution. By the end of the week, rumors began circulating that Emily was difficult, that she did not understand politics, that she thought she was smarter than everyone else. Emily heard them. She also saw something else. Some of the accelerated timelines were quietly adjusted back. A pilot program she proposed was approved without her name attached. A supplier shutdown was delayed pending further review. Small changes. Invisible to most, but deliberate. Late Friday afternoon, Daniel called her again. No conference room this time. Just a brief stop by her desk. You are being blamed for things you did not cause, he said quietly. Emily did not look surprised. That is usually how it works. And yet, Daniel continued, you are still here. She met his eyes. So are you. He studied her for a long moment. This system protects itself, he said. People rarely push back unless they are protected. Emily shook her head. I am not protected. Daniel's expression softened, just slightly. You are, he said. You just do not know it yet. As he walked away, Emily returned to her screen. Hands steady, posture unchanged. She did not know who was moving pieces behind the scenes. She only knew this. The test was no longer one-sided, and someone, somewhere above her, was finally making it harder for the system to pretend nothing was wrong. The email arrived at 8:47 on a Monday morning. Subject: Employment Status Update. Emily Carter read it once, then again, then she closed her eyes. The message was brief, polite, final. Her position was being eliminated as part of a broader restructuring. Effective immediately, human resources would coordinate next steps. Her access would be disabled by end of day. No mention of performance. No mention of cause. No mention of the work she had done quietly, carefully, relentlessly. Around her, the office moved as usual. People talked about weekend plans. Someone reheated coffee in the break room. The printer jammed and beeped. Emily sat very still. This was the moment everyone warned her about. She gathered her things slowly. Notebook, charger, the mug she kept at her desk. No one stopped her. No one asked questions. A few people avoided eye contact. One person mouthed, "I am sorry," without sound. Human resources met her in a small room with neutral lighting. "This is not disciplinary," the representative said. "It is a business decision." Emily nodded. She had heard the phrase before. "You will receive severance," the representative continued. "We appreciate your contributions." Emily signed where she was told to sign. She did not argue. She did not cry. She did not explain herself. By noon, she was standing outside the building, box in her arms, the weight of the city pressing in around her. Wind cut through her jacket as traffic roared past. She felt empty, not shocked, just tired. At home, she set the box down on the floor and sat on the couch without turning on the lights. Her phone buzzed once. Then again, messages from coworkers, from Mark, from Linda. None of them could change what had already happened. Emily stared at the wall and let the quiet settle. She thought about what she would say in interviews, about how to explain why she left, about the rent due next month, about the line she would not cross even now, even desperate. She did not regret speaking up, but regret and consequence were not the same thing. Across the city, Daniel Wright stood in a glass-walled office, reading the same email on his tablet. His expression did not change, but his grip tightened. He had not approved this. He checked the timestamp, the authorization trail, the sign-offs. Someone had moved faster than expected. Someone had assumed silence meant permission. Daniel closed the tablet and looked out over the skyline. The city had rewarded him for decisiveness, his entire career, for choosing outcomes over individuals, but this time, the outcome was wrong, and it had been done in his name. He turned back to his desk and picked up the phone. "Get me the full termination file," he said. A pause. "Yes," he repeated. Now, that evening, Emily cooked a simple dinner she barely tasted. She updated her resume without embellishment. She saved versions. She shut her laptop. For the first time in years, she had nothing scheduled for the next day. She sat by the window as the city lights flickered on, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle fully on her shoulders. She had done everything right, and still, she had lost. What Emily did not know was that this was the moment the test ended. Because when integrity is punished, someone else must decide whether the system stands or falls. And Daniel Wright was no longer observing. He was about to act. Emily Carter was halfway through her second cup of coffee when the knock came. It was late morning. Too early to feel hopeful. Too late to pretend yesterday had not happened. She opened the door expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, she saw Daniel Wright, not in a suit, no entourage, no security, just him, standing in the narrow hallway of her apartment building, holding a thin folder under his arm. "I owe you an explanation," he said. Emily did not step aside immediately. "You already made one," she replied. "In an email." Daniel nodded. "That was not my decision." She studied his face, searching for calculation, for damage control. She found none. "May I come in?" he asked. After a moment, she stepped aside. The apartment was small, clean, practical. No view of the skyline. No signs of excess. Daniel took it in, without comment. He placed the folder on the table but did not open it yet. "You were terminated without my approval," he said. "That should not have happened." Emily folded her arms. "It did happen." "Yes," Daniel said. "And the reason matters." She waited. "For weeks," he continued. "I allowed the system to respond to you on its own. I wanted to see what it did when challenged by someone without power." Emily's jaw tightened. "You tested me." "I observed," Daniel corrected. "There is a difference. And while you observed," she said, "I lost my job. It's so mine." Daniel did not argue. "That is why I am here," he said quietly. "Not to offer you something. To return something that should not have been taken." He opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, approval trails, meeting notes, a timeline of quiet decisions made behind closed doors. "They removed you because you made documentation dangerous," Daniel said. "You forced accountability. People do not like that." Emily glanced at the pages, then looked away. "So what happens now?" Daniel met her gaze. "Now I fix what was done in my name." That afternoon, an emergency executive meeting was called. Not routine. Not scheduled. Mandatory. Senior leadership gathered in the same glass-walled room where Emily had first spoken up weeks earlier. The same charts. The same skyline. This time, Daniel stood. "We are reversing the termination of Emily Carter," he said calmly. Murmurs rippled through the room. "The supplier transition plan is also suspended pending a full review," he continued. "And there will be an internal audit on how that decision was accelerated without proper authorization." Someone cleared their throat. "That will impact projections." "Yes," Daniel said. "So will lawsuits and public exposure." Silence followed. "I want to be clear," he added. "Integrity is not optional here. If anyone believes otherwise, we should discuss their future at this company." And definitive. With Tanzan definitive. The meeting ended quickly after that. Emily did not hear about it until her phone rang. Human resources. This time, the tone was different. Apologies. Corrections. An invitation to return, reinstated with full access and a revised role. She listened without interruption. When the call ended, she sat quietly for a long moment. Then she stood, picked up her jacket, and left the apartment. Emily returned to the building the next day. Not quietly, not hidden. Her badge worked. Heads turned. Whispers followed. Daniel waited near the elevators. "This is your choice," he said. "You do not owe this company anything." Emily looked around. "At the people, at the space where decisions were made. I am not here because you fixed it," she said. "I am here because it still needs fixing." Daniel nodded. Once. For the first time, the reveal was complete. Not of wealth, not of power, but of where he stood and who he stood behind. The weeks that followed did not turn into a celebration. They turned into work. Emily Carter stepped back into her role with the same posture she had always carried, but the ground beneath her had shifted. Meetings felt different now. Not easier, just more honest. People spoke carefully around her, not because she held power, but because they knew she would document what was said. Supplier reviews were reopened. Timelines adjusted. Quiet decisions dragged into daylight. The system resisted, but it no longer pretended nothing was wrong. Daniel Wright kept his distance. He did not invite her to dinners. He did not offer praise in public. He did not try to turn the story into a redemption headline. He showed up in meetings, he asked questions, he backed decisions with consequences, and when someone tried to dismiss Emily's analysis with a familiar phrase, he shut it down immediately. "That is not business," he said once. "That is avoidance." Daughter to their every tensions, and we fled. Emily noticed. So did everyone else. One evening, long after most of the building had emptied, Emily found Daniel standing by the windows, jacket on, waiting. "You stayed," he said. "So did you." she replied. He nodded. I wanted to say this clearly, without authority attached. She waited. I was wrong, Daniel said. Not about the numbers, about what leadership costs. Emily studied him, then spoke softly. You assumed the system would correct itself. Yes, he admitted. It did not. They stood in silence for a moment, the city glowing below them. I am not interested in favors, Emily said. Or protection. I know, Daniel replied. That is why I trust you. She exhaled slowly. I am still deciding what this means for me, she said. As you should, he said. If you walk away tomorrow, this still stands. She met his gaze. And if I stay, then we build something that does not require silence to function. Emily considered that. She thought about the kitchen table where she tracked expenses, about the people whose jobs had been delayed long enough to find alternatives, about the line she refused to cross, even when it cost her everything. I will stay, she said. For now, Daniel smiled. Not like a man who had won something, like a man who had learned something. Months later, the story circulated quietly inside the company. Not as gossip, as caution, about the junior manager who did not back down, about the chief executive who listened when it finally mattered. There were no headlines, just change. One morning, as Emily walked into a meeting, Daniel fell into step beside her. You know, he said, I used to think business was about distance. She glanced at him. And now I know it is about what you are willing to make personal. Emily nodded once. That was enough. Because the truth was simple. He did not change because she stood up to him. He changed because she did not disappear when it would have been easier. And in the end, the most powerful thing she ever did was not speaking up. It was staying true when no one was watching.